You know that moment when someone you love says something so devastating that your whole world shifts. My dad looked me straight in the eye and said, "You have ruined our lives. You are a burden." I stood there at his doorstep, the same doorstep I had walked through countless times carrying financial relief for my family. For 3 years, I had been quietly paying their electricity, water, internet, and more. $28,440 of my hard-earned money, given freely out of love. But as those words hit me like a physical blow, something inside me finally clicked. I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I was finally free. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know in the comments where you are watching from and hit that like button if you have ever felt unappreciated by family. Subscribe for more real stories, because what happened after I walked away that day changed everything for all of us. 3 years ago, I was 25-year-old Kylie, fresh out of college with my marketing degree and my first real job paying $45,000 a year. I felt like I had made it. My parents, Robert and Patricia, had always struggled financially. Dad was a mechanic who had to retire early because of a back injury, and Mom worked part-time at the local grocery store. When I saw their utility bills piling up that first month in my new apartment, my heart just broke for them. I remember the exact moment I decided to help. I was visiting for Sunday dinner when Mom mentioned they might have to choose between keeping the heat on or paying for groceries that week. The electric bill was $120, which seemed manageable on my new salary. So I quietly called the electric company the next day and set up automatic payments from my account. I did not tell them right away. I wanted it to be a surprise, a way to show how grateful I was for everything they had done raising me. When they found out a month later, Mom cried. Dad hugged me so tight I thought my ribs might crack. They kept saying how proud they were, how I was such a good daughter. That feeling, that warmth of being needed and appreciated, it was addictive. So when winter came and the water bill became another struggle, I added that to my automatic payments too. $80 a month seemed reasonable for the peace of mind it gave all of us. Within 6 months, I was also covering their internet at $60 monthly and had added them to my cell phone plan for an additional $180. My little studio apartment cost $800 in rent, and suddenly I was paying nearly that same amount just to keep my family comfortable. I had to buy generic groceries and eat ramen noodles most nights. But seeing my parents stress-free felt worth every sacrifice. My younger brother Jake was 25 too, but unlike me, he still lived at home rent-free. He had dropped out of his construction job 6 months after I started helping with bills, claiming he needed time to find something better. During our family dinners, Mom and Dad would always praise Jake for his potential, his big dreams, his creative ideas for future businesses. They seemed to forget that I was the one making their comfortable lifestyle possible. I started noticing small things that bothered me. When I mentioned needing to skip a cousin's birthday party because money was tight, Mom suggested I should budget better. When relatives visited and praised our family's financial stability, no one ever mentioned my contribution. It was always about how responsible Jake was around the house, or how smart Dad was for managing their money so well. I began to feel invisible, like an ATM that nobody really saw as a person. The first real warning sign came when my car broke down and needed a $1,000 repair. I had to skip paying their electric bill that month to cover the emergency. Mom called me 3 times that day, increasingly frantic about the late notice they had received. Not once did she ask if I was okay or if I needed help with my car situation. Just when could I get their payment caught up? That night, I sat in my tiny apartment eating another bowl of ramen and wondered when exactly I had become nothing more than a paycheck to them. But I pushed those thoughts away. These were my parents. They had raised me, sacrificed for me when I was young. This was just my turn to give back. I convinced myself that their gratitude was implied, that love did not always need words. When I got a promotion and a raise to $55,000, I decided to surprise them by adding cable television with premium channels to the bills I covered. I thought maybe if I could do even more, they would see how much I cared. The next 6 months tested every boundary I thought I had. It started innocently enough when Mom called, asking if I could help with their car insurance. The premium had gone up to $200 a month, and with Jake still job hunting, they were really struggling. Of course I said yes. By then, saying no to my family felt impossible, like I would be letting down everyone who had ever believed in me. Then Dad mentioned during a particularly cold February that their heating bill was becoming unmanageable. $150 a month, he said, just to keep the house warm enough to be livable. He did not directly ask me to pay it, but the implication hung in the air like smoke. Within a week, I had added heating costs to my growing list of family expenses. I was now paying $790 monthly for their household needs, while still paying $800 for my own rent. Jake had been unemployed for 8 months at that point, but nobody seemed to pressure him about contributing to household expenses. Instead, family conversations revolved around his job search struggles and how hard it was for young people to find good work these days. When I mentioned that I was also young and managing to support myself, plus help the family, Dad pointed out that marketing was a more stable field than construction. They made it sound like my financial stability was just luck, rather than hard work and sacrifice. The dynamics in our family started shifting in ways that made me increasingly uncomfortable. During Sunday dinners, Jake would complain about potential employers not recognizing his worth, while I sat there knowing I had not bought new clothes in 8 months because every spare dollar went to keeping their lives comfortable. Mom would agree with Jake about how unfair the job market was, but when I mentioned feeling overwhelmed by my own expenses, she would suggest I was being dramatic. 2 months ago was my birthday. I had been looking forward to it for weeks, hoping maybe the family would plan something small, just an acknowledgement that I was important to them too. Instead, they completely forgot. No call, no text, nothing. But the following week, when Jake's birthday came around, they planned a big celebration at his favorite restaurant. The bill came to $300, and without even thinking about it, they handed me the check. I paid it with a smile. But inside, something was crumbling. That night, I called my friend Sarah, sobbing in my car outside the restaurant. She listened patiently as I explained how invisible I felt, how I was working so hard to keep everyone happy, but felt completely unappreciated. Sarah gently suggested that maybe I needed to set some boundaries to have a conversation with my family about feeling taken for granted, but I defended them like I always did. They raised me, I said. This was the least I could do to pay them back. 3 weeks later, Mom had a medical emergency that required an emergency room visit. The bill was $2,000 after insurance, and without any discussion, the family assumed I would cover it. I emptied my emergency savings account, the money I had been setting aside for my own future, to pay her medical bills. I had to cancel my own dental appointment because I could no longer afford the treatment I needed. The breaking point came when I overheard Mom talking to our neighbor, Mrs. Anderson. She was bragging about how responsible Jake was, how he helped so much around the house, how lucky they were to have such a good son. I stood there listening, waiting for her to mention the nearly $30,000 I had contributed to their household over 3 years. But my name never came up. I was not part of their pride, their gratitude, their story of family success. That night, I stared at my bank account, seeing how little I had left after supporting everyone else's life. I was living like a college student, while my unemployed brother lived comfortably in his childhood bedroom. My parents enjoyed premium cable and high-speed internet, and I ate generic pasta for dinner most nights. Something had to change, but I had no idea how to even begin that conversation. Sarah noticed I had stopped going out with friends, stopped buying anything nice for myself, stopped talking about my own goals and dreams. When she asked if I was okay, I realized I had not thought about my own happiness in months. I was so busy being the family ATM that I had forgotten to be Kylie, the person with her own needs and worth. That was when I decided it was time to have the conversation I had been avoiding. I was going to ask for something I had never requested before: simple acknowledgement and appreciation for everything I had been doing. Sunday afternoon arrived gray and drizzly, matching my nervous mood as I drove to my parents' house. I had rehearsed this conversation in my head dozens of times, trying to find words that would not sound ungrateful or selfish. All I wanted was recognition that my financial support had made their lives easier, and maybe some appreciation for the sacrifices I had made to help them. I thought it was a reasonable request from a daughter who had given so much. I found Mom in the kitchen and Dad watching television in his recliner. Jake was in his room, probably playing video games on the internet connection I was paying for. I took a deep breath and decided to just be direct and honest about how I was feeling. Mom, Dad, I need to talk about our financial arrangement, I said, settling into the chair across from Dad's recliner. Mom looked up from her crossword puzzle with a confused expression. What arrangement you help family that is normal? I explained that over the past 3 years I had contributed $28,440 to their household expenses. I had covered electricity, water, internet, cell phone plans, car insurance, heating costs, and medical bills. I was not asking them to pay me back, but I did want some acknowledgement of how much I had sacrificed to help them. Dad's face darkened immediately. You are keeping track. That is selfish, Kylie. Family does not keep score. I tried to explain that I was not keeping score just hoping for appreciation. I mentioned that I had been living on ramen noodles and generic groceries for 3 years while they enjoyed comfortable lives. I pointed out that Jake had not contributed financially despite living at home rent-free for over a year. Jake is figuring things out, Mom said defensively. You are established in your career. It is different. I had to figure things out too, I replied, feeling my voice start to shake. I figured it out while supporting everyone else. Dad leaned forward in his chair, his voice getting louder. Do not be dramatic, Kylie. We never asked you to live fancy. You chose to help because you are family. I felt my composure starting to crack. All I had asked for was a simple thank you, some recognition that my help had made their lives better. Instead, they were making me feel guilty for even bringing it up. Just then, Jake wandered into the living room, drawn by the raised voices. What is going on? He asked, looking annoyed that his gaming session had been interrupted by family drama. Your sister is complaining about helping family, Dad said with disgust in his voice. Jake looked at me with confusion and irritation. You make good money, Kylie. Why are you complaining about helping out? That was the moment something inside me snapped. I make good money, but I live like a college student so you all can be comfortable. I shouted, years of suppressed frustration finally boiling over. Do you have any idea what I've given up so you can have premium cable and high-speed internet? Mom stood up, her face flushed with anger. Nobody asked you to sacrifice anything, Kylie. If you are so miserable helping your own family, then maybe you should stop. The room fell silent except for the sound of the television still playing in the background. I stared at my mother, processing what she had just said. 3 years of financial support. 3 years of putting their needs before my own, and her response was that nobody had asked for my help. Then Dad delivered the words that changed everything. He stood up, towering over me with rage in his eyes, and said, You know what? You have ruined our lives with this attitude. We were fine before your guilt trips. You are a burden with all this drama. Maybe you should just leave if helping family is such a problem. The words hit me like a physical blow. I sat there for 30 seconds processing what my father had just said to me. I was a burden. After nearly $30,000 of financial support, after 3 years of putting their comfort before my own basic needs, I was the problem. I was ruining their lives by asking for appreciation. And then something strange happened. I smiled, not because I was happy, but because everything suddenly became crystal clear. I stood up slowly, picked up my purse, and looked at each of them calmly. You are absolutely right, Dad. I said, my voice steady for the first time in the conversation. I should just leave. And you are right too, Mom. Nobody asked me to sacrifice. I walked toward the door, feeling lighter with each step. Mom called after me, her voice now uncertain. Where are you going? We are not done talking. I turned around one last time, looking at the family I had supported unconditionally for 3 years. Actually, we are done talking. Enjoy figuring things out. I closed the door behind me and sat in my car for 10 minutes, my hands shaking from adrenaline. It was a mixture of heartbreak and relief, unlike anything I had ever experienced. I texted Sarah. I finally did it. I walked away. That evening, I received a text from Mom. Do not come back until you can apologize for your attitude. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back a simple response. Okay. Then I opened my banking app and started canceling every automatic payment I had set up for their household. Electric company water department, internet provider, cell phone plan, car insurance, heating costs. One by one, I removed my financial support from their lives. For the first time in 3 years, my money was going to be mine to spend on my own life. That night, I ordered Thai food for delivery instead of cooking ramen noodles. I cried for the family relationship I had lost, but I also felt lighter than I had in years. I was finally free from being treated like an ATM instead of a daughter. The first week after walking away was the most peaceful I had experienced in years. Without $790 in monthly family expenses, I suddenly had breathing room in my budget. I started apartment hunting and found a beautiful one-bedroom place for $1,200 that I could now easily afford. Sarah helped me move, and we celebrated my independence with champagne and Chinese takeout. For 7 days, my phone stayed blissfully quiet. No calls about late bills, no texts, asking for help with unexpected expenses, no family drama demanding my immediate financial attention. I bought real groceries, treated myself to coffee shop visits, and even purchased a new outfit for work. Simple pleasures that had been impossible when most of my paycheck went to supporting other people. But reality has a way of catching up with everyone. The second week brought the first wave of consequences. Electric company sent a disconnect notice to my parents' house. 3 days later, their internet service was terminated for non-payment. Jake's online gaming suddenly became impossible, and Dad could no longer stream his favorite shows on the premium cable channels I had been covering. My phone rang 6 times that day. I let every call go to voicemail. The following Monday, Mom sent her first text, "Why did you stop paying the bills?" I replied immediately, "You said nobody asked me to sacrifice." Tuesday brought another message. "This is ridiculous, Kylie. Just pay the bills and we can talk." "I am not a burden anymore, remember?" I typed back. By the third week, multiple utility services had been disconnected. Jake was forced to get a job at a local warehouse just to help cover basic expenses. For the first time in over a year, he was contributing financially to the household he had been living in, rent-free. Mom had to pick up extra shifts at the grocery store, and Dad was struggling to find part-time work despite his back problems. I heard about their struggles through my cousin Maria, who called to check on our family situation. Apparently, the whole extended family was talking about the sudden financial crisis at my parents' house. Nobody could understand why their bills were not being paid when they had always seemed so financially stable. "Are you okay, Kylie?" Maria asked. "Your mom seems really stressed lately." "I am doing great," I told her honestly. "Better than I have in years." Month 2 brought desperation. Robert tried calling me from different phone numbers, hoping I would answer if I did not recognize the caller ID. Patricia sent increasingly frantic texts, alternating between anger and pleading. Jake finally understood the scope of what I had been contributing and tried reaching out with a new perspective. His message was longer than any text he had ever sent me. "Kylie, I never realized how much you were paying for everything. I get it now. This is really hard and I am sorry for what I said. Can we talk?" I appreciated his honesty, but I was not ready to resume my role as family ATM. "I am glad you understand now," I replied. "You are all figuring it out just like you said I needed to." Meanwhile, my own life was flourishing. I had money for a dentist appointment, finally getting the dental work I had postponed to pay Mom's medical bills. I started dating Marcus, an accountant who appreciated my responsible financial habits and could not believe I had been supporting my entire family for 3 years. We took weekend trips to nearby cities, experiences I never could have afforded when most of my money was going to other people. At work, I was performing better because I was less stressed about money. My boss noticed my improved focus and energy, leading to discussions about future promotions. For the first time since college, I was building an emergency fund and contributing to my retirement account. I felt like an adult managing my own life instead of a financial caretaker for everyone else. But my family situation was deteriorating rapidly. The heating system broke down in late February, requiring a $3,000 repair. With their credit cards already maxed out and no savings account to draw from, they were facing the possibility of being without heat during the coldest part of winter. That was when my phone truly exploded. March 15th started like any normal Wednesday, but by noon I had received 47 text messages from Mom, 12 voicemails from Dad, and calls from 3 different relatives who had been contacted by my desperate parents. Jake sent a voice message where I could hear him crying, admitting he had never appreciated the sacrifices I made, and begging me to help with the heating crisis. Cousins, aunts, uncles, and family friends were suddenly messaging me on Facebook, sending emails, and calling my work number. Everyone wanted to know why I was not helping my family in their time of need. The pressure was intense, but I realized this was exactly what I needed to experience to understand how unhealthy our family dynamic had become. I turned off my phone for the entire weekend and drove to Napa Valley for my first solo vacation in over 5 years. I stayed at a bed and breakfast, went wine tasting, and spent hours reflecting on boundaries and self-worth. The quiet time helped me gain perspective on what I wanted my relationship with my family to look like moving forward. When I turned my phone back on Sunday evening, I had 112 missed messages. But I had clarity now about what needed to happen next. Monday morning, I texted my parents asking to meet at a neutral location. We arranged to have coffee at a small cafe downtown, away from the emotional triggers of their house, where so many financial discussions had taken place. Dad looked older than I remembered, and Mom seemed exhausted from working extra hours to cover their expenses. Jake came too, and I could see genuine remorse in his expression when he looked at me. "We made a mistake," Dad said quietly, his voice lacking the anger that had been there during our last conversation. "You were not a burden. We were wrong to say that." Mom nodded, tears in her eyes. "We got used to your help and forgot to be grateful. That was unfair to you." Jake looked down at his hands. "I never realized how much you were covering until I had to start helping with bills. I am sorry for calling you dramatic. You were supporting all of us while I was not contributing anything." I listened to their apologies, feeling a mixture of validation and sadness. Part of me wanted to immediately resume helping them to fix their problems and return to the familiar pattern of being needed. But I had learned too much about myself in the past 3 months to go back to that unhealthy dynamic. "I appreciate your apologies," I said carefully, "but I need you to understand that our relationship has to change." I explained my new boundaries. I would not be providing regular financial support anymore. I was willing to have monthly dinners together and rebuild our relationship slowly, but it had to be based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. Over the following months, our family learned to function differently. Jake kept both of his jobs and became the primary financial contributor to the household. Mom and Dad adjusted their lifestyle to match their actual income instead of the inflated standard of living my support had provided. They qualified for assistance programs they had not needed when I was supplementing their income. Most importantly, they learned to value what they had before taking it for granted. I continued building my own life, establishing an emergency fund, investing in my future, and developing a healthy relationship with Marcus. I started mentoring friends who were struggling with similar family dynamics, helping them understand that love should not require financial sacrifice without appreciation. 6 months after that devastating Sunday confrontation, our family relationships were healthier than they had ever been. My parents expressed genuine gratitude when I occasionally helped with small expenses, and Jake had become a responsible adult who understood the value of contributing to his household. The most profound lesson I learned was that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is letting them face the consequences of taking you for granted. When I stopped enabling their financial irresponsibility, they were forced to develop their own solutions and coping strategies. I learned that being appreciated starts with appreciating yourself. For 3 years, I had valued everyone else's comfort more than my own well-being, sending the message that my needs were not important. When I finally started prioritizing my own financial health, my family learned to respect my worth as a person rather than just seeing me as a source of money. Walking away does not mean you love less. Sometimes it means you love yourself enough to demand the respect you deserve. True family bonds come from mutual care and appreciation, not from financial obligation or guilt. My relationship with my parents is stronger now because it is built on choice rather than dependency. When I help them occasionally, it is because I want to, not because they expect it. They thank me genuinely, and I feel valued as their daughter rather than taken for granted as their financial solution. That smile I gave my dad when he called me a burden was not about happiness. It was about freedom. Freedom from a role that was destroying my self-worth. Freedom to build the life I deserved, and freedom to be loved for who I was rather than what I could provide. Have you ever been taken for granted by people you love? Have you found yourself giving so much that you forgot to take care of your own needs? Let me know in the comments what boundaries you think are important in family relationships. If this story helped you think about your own situation differently, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe for more real stories about finding your worth and building healthy relationships. Remember, you deserve to be appreciated for who you are, not just what you can give. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it encourages you to value yourself as much as you value the people you love. Take care of yourselves out there.